Hey, what's going on, all my legacy leaders out there? This is your host, um, Robert Heath Sr. We're here with the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we help leaders to change the world one legacy at a time. Like I said, I'm your host, Robert Heath Sr. Wanted to just let you know that I really appreciate you all tuning in, really appreciate you all being here today. As is always the case, I'm really excited for having the opportunity to kind of talk to you today about one of my favorite topics, which is leadership, and being able to really get to for the guest that we're going to have on today, good friend Rev William Mack, who's going to talk to us a lot about the work that he's been doing with tough conversations and having tough talks with our youth. So we're going to be really getting into it, but I wanted to give you the kind of get over the beginning stuff. And as you know, that we're starting off and trying to make this work, so I'm still working out the beginning. Let me know some of the comments, how you like what we're doing and what we're talking about as we go forward, because your feedback is really helpful to letting me know what we need to do and whether what we're doing is working. So like I said, I'm your host, Robert Heath Sr. I'm the CEO of Legacy Leadership Consulting and the founder of the Legacy Empowerment Academy. Each episode, I want you to know, hey, Shawnee, what's going on, cuz? Each episode, I want you to know that I really am thankful that you all tune in, that you watch, and that you're here, and that we get to spend our time and gather together, learning how to both improve ourselves, improve our ability to manifest greatness in ourselves, and also how we as leaders can help others to manifest their greatness in them so that we can change the world one legacy at a time. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. And before we get too far in the discussion, why don't you all who are out there go ahead and shoot out some hearts. Let me know that you're out there, that everything's working, that you can hear me. Hey, Saba, how we doing? And what I want you also to do, for those of you all that are watching on the replay, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for clicking and watching the show. And what I want you to do is to go ahead and let me know where you're listening from, where you're at, and what you do. If you're a leader, if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, what type of leadership you're in, how you're involved in leadership, or if you're just here to learn, that's fine as well. Thank you all for tuning in, right? And so I want to give you our quote for the week. The quote for the week is going to come from Warren Bennis. That's Warren Bennis. He's one of the founders of leadership studies in America, and he's a professor emeritus he was a professor emeritus at USC and helped to create the leadership studies program there. And what he said is, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Again, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in our legacy leadership discussion, but I want you to just sit on that one for a little while. Leadership is the capacity to turn vision into reality. Hey, Cody, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in, brother. And so as we move on to our next segment, before we get into our legacy leadership discussion, I always want to go over the rules to make sure that everybody knows how we conduct ourselves and how to make sure that we have a awesome discourse even when we disagree. So rule number one, of course, is get connected. If you haven't gotten connected to us, you can go over to our website, legacyleadershipmastery.com. You can also go to our Facebook group, #LegacyLeaders. You can join there and get access to a bunch of wonderful content. You can also go to our professional Facebook page for Legacy Leadership Consulting. That's where all of the podcasts are stored, and so you can go and watch older episodes and check us out there. But go ahead and connect, and when you go on to Facebook, make sure that you type in and that you set us so that we pop up first on your Facebook feed. There's a way that you can do that where you just go into your settings and you make sure that you get notified from us first, so that you never miss an episode, you never miss a post, because we're constantly putting out great content for you all, specifically about how to manifest the greatness that lies within you and that lies within those that you lead. All right, step number 2, you want to spread the wealth. We need you to share the word. We're trying to get as many listeners as we can, as many people watching as we can, so that we can get this good information out. Especially, I'm constantly having great guests who have tremendous legacy transformation stories. And right, one of the things that we learn about history is that it's so much easier to learn from other people's stories, right? you can learn from other people's experiences. And so this is one of the shows, one of the things that we want to be able to do on the show is give you other people's experiences of how they have transformed their lives, how leadership has helped them. And what we want you all to do is help us to reach more people, because right, like we have our goal of reaching 1 million legacy leaders over the next 10 years. So share the wealth and help us to reach that goal. Lastly, we want to talk about respect, right? This is a zone that is a zone that's full of debate. It's fine for us to debate. Leadership is about helping people to grow and helping people to get to the best out of themselves. So we want to make sure that, if you have an opinion or if you have something that you think you want to say, that's great, but we want to respect everybody. We want this to be a respectful place. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to agree to disagree, but the big thing is that we have to disagree agreeably. We have to make sure that we're respecting each other as we go on this journey, right? So thank you all again for tuning in. I know that you all are going to abide by those rules, and so I appreciate it. And so before we get to our interview with Mack, I want to go ahead and turn to our legacy leadership discussion. So like we said, our quote for the week was from Warren Bennis, who is one of the founders, again, of modern day leadership studies. And he said, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And what I want to do is to talk a little bit today about the fact that leadership is actually two different parts, right? Leadership is part fantasy and part reality. And what do I mean when I say that? So in order to be a leader, you have to have a vision. You have to be able to see the world differently as it is today, right? You have to see it, have a vision of the world in a way that is different, in a way that is changed, in a way that is not what is actually there today. And here's the interesting thing about that. In order to see that, in order to have a vision like that, you have to live in fantasy land, right? It is. I remember I was watching an interview with Will Smith. I was watching an interview with Will Smith, and one of the things that he's saying that it just struck me how profound and simple it was all at the same time. He was like, you have to be crazy, or you have to be, it's a completely unreasonable thought to think that we could bring something into the world that has never existed in the world before. It is completely unreasonable to think that we can change the world. Steve Jobs talked about it like this, right? In the Apple campaign in the 80s, they say, only someone crazy can believe that they can change the world. However, the people crazy enough to believe that they can change the world are usually the ones that do, right? And so I want all of you all to, to focus on, there's one part of leadership that is visionaryism. There's one part of leadership that is all about what you can see, what you can intuit, what you can divine into the future of what's going to be there. But then there's another part of leadership, right, that makes it distinct from just being a visionary, from just being a, in the grossest sense of the term, a clairvoyant, or someone who just focuses on the future. There's a part of leadership that is very pragmatic, that is very realistic, and that's the part that's facilitating the transformation, right? And as Warren Bennis talks about, that's translating that vision into reality. That's the key that separates leaders. Leaders not only are able to see the vision of a future, leaders are able to take the world as it is and help to move it into that future. And so part of what we want to be able to do as leaders, right, is help ourselves, but then also help other people to move from where they are, move from their vision of the future, and move from their place in history, right, and their place in their giftings, and to help them to manifest to a greater place, to a larger experience, right? And so as we talk about that, one of the things that I want you to think about is, what are the skills that you have learned over the time that you've been growing in your leadership studies, that are specifically about helping other people to better themselves, specifically about helping other people to see their gifts, not to see the world as you see it, but to allow them to see their world differently, right? And there's a little nuance there, and I want to be clear that leadership is not so much about you getting people to see what you see in them. That's eventually where we want to go. But the first step is just getting them to be able to see something a little bit different, right? getting them to be able to see something in themselves that they didn't see before. And then we grow on that, we build on that. And so ultimately, your mettle as a leader is your ability to transition or transform your vision into a reality by helping people to manifest the gifts that are within them. And so that's kind of our legacy leadership discussion for today. Wanted to just give you a little something to think about on that. Let me know in the comments what you think, whether or not you think that, leadership being one part reality, one part fantasy, if that makes sense to you. All right. So, like I said, you are tuned in to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we're working to change the world one legacy at a time. This podcast is presented by Legacy Leadership Consulting and the Legacy Empowerment Academy. Our vision is a world where everyone understands the amazing gifts that lie within them, and all leaders work to facilitate the manifestation of these gifts in those that they lead. The goal of this podcast and the mission of Legacy Leadership Consulting is to help leaders cultivate environments that facilitate the manifestation of their greatness, their team's greatness, and that create systems that sustain that transformation. We develop leaders who develop other leaders. So for more information on how we can transform your business or organization's leadership team, please go to www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. Again, that's www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. To learn more about how to make the journey from becoming a legacy leader, and to learn more about the Empower Method that I discuss in all of our teachings, be sure to get a copy of my best-selling book, Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to Having More Fulfillment, Less Stress, and Getting the Best Out of Your Team on every project. That's available now on Amazon Kindle and available for paperback for $10, $7.99 on Amazon Kindle, and available for $10 on paperback. You can find a link down below in the description, a link in the comments. All right. So what we want to do now, I want to turn to our guest. Our guest for today is a good friend of mine, the Rev William Mack III. Right. He's another one of those members of that creative collaborative that I talked to you about, that is a mastermind that I'm part of, a phenomenal group of individuals who are really working to change the world. And so I wanted to give you just a little bit of background information on Mack. All right, so here we go. For over 20 years, Reverend William Mack III has been about the business of helping to heal and rebuild families as a youth minister, a counselor, caseworker, educator, pastor, and a real funny dude. That's just for me, right? So Reverend Mack, or simply Mack as he's called by all of us that know him, brings the full weight of his extensive background in the creative arts, theology, and family community development together in his teaching style. The result is a casually charismatic and disciplined approach that combines real talk sensibility with a shepherd's firm but gentle guidance to create safe spaces for his students and charges to confront their issues on their own and on their own terms. But he does more than just that. He gives them the tools so that they can address them. He's both a pastor and a public speaker. He's reached and changed the lives of thousands of people, one conversation at a time. Mack's methods have helped families to successfully navigate the depths of depression, addiction, gun violence, suicide, divorce, and countless other trauma that could leave families devastated. His commitment to finding ways to talk you through the tough stuff has helped countless people find hope in difficult times and the courage to face difficult realities. Mack currently serves as the co-pastor of Grace Community Covenant Church of Louisville, Kentucky, and he does that along with his wife. Together they are raising 6 children and 1 grandson. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to turn to my friend and soon to be yours, Reverend William Mack III. So let me go ahead and do the technology really quickly. Let's go back to this. All right. And so let's see. All right. Here we go. Let's get back in here. All right. So going ahead and adding that on and asking to bring it on. Let's see what the technology is doing for us. So if you will, go ahead and give us just a little bit of time. Let's see. All right, he was just there. So we just got to go and get this fixed so that it's working like it's supposed to. All right, let's see when he comes back. I apologize for the delay. All right, so, all right, Max, so if you can hear me, it's saying that I can't bring you on the camera right now, so go ahead and shoot me another request, or let's make sure that we check this real quick so we can get on there and get you on the camera so that everybody can see you and benefit from your phenomenal presence, wisdom, and just hilarious nature. So we should have them on here in just a second. While we're doing that, and we've got the while we got that working, one of the things that I am going to do is go ahead and share this out while we're waiting on the technology to do what it's supposed to do. How about everybody go ahead and make sure you share this out to all of your friends and everybody who you could think of that could benefit from hearing from Rev Mack, because he's definitely going to be letting us know some important things, especially in the world of dealing with youth and dealing with family issues and things like that. So here we go. Let's see. Hey Virgie, how you doing? Thank you for tuning in. All right. Okay, let's see here. All right. So, let's see. All right, so really quickly, Mac, when you are, I see that you're here, good, and what I need you to do is go in there and try to just go ahead and push there we go, got it. There's a request, all right, perfect. He's about to come on, everybody get ready. Hey, brother.
Oh,
How we doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great now that I
I
got past my
literally have no idea
technological.
right. I have no idea what just happened.
No problem at all. Like I'm just figuring it out. I'm telling you, like this has been such a learning experience, right? This is our seventh episode, and every time something new happens, and I'm like,
Something
oh,
new.
that's the thing.
I was tapping stuff. I'm like, I don't want to break it. What did I do? Okay, anyway.
Yeah, but nah, great. I'm glad that you all here. I have been excited about this, brother, ever since I first met you when we first got together in the mastermind, and life has been just awesome ever since. So I wanted to get you all here and just let everybody, experience your awesomeness.
Bless you, boy. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Good to go. No problem. It's a pleasure. I'm so glad to have you. So, as we do with all of our guests, when you come on, I gave them your bio, let them know all the stuff you're doing. But talk to us a little bit about, we start off with your legacy transformation journey, right? What was the thing? When was the moment that you realized that you could that you could be more, that you could do more, that you could have more in life?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I've been scared to answer it since you sent me the email, right? Um, but I grew up around some really positive and affirming people that always told me
Mm,
what I could be and what I could do when I grow up.
nice.
But the problem was, and those who know me intimately will tell you, I had trouble seeing what they saw. I had a hard time believing what they heard, see what they saw, and a lot of that came
Mm-hmm.
from a lot of different places. Some of it came from my childhood. Some things came from comparing myself to other
Mm-hmm.
people and in situations. Um, and so for me, man, I labeled myself and marketed myself as the best assistant that anybody could ever have,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I kind of positioned myself there, kind of out of a comfort zone, as a position of comfort,
Mm-hmm.
because I figured if I was, as long as I was assisting somebody, I would always be in the shadows, and nobody was ever looking directly at me, because I just
Right.
never really believed I had anything to offer anyone. Um, and man, really over the last, I would say last 4 to 5 years, God really
Mm.
just started kind of pulling me out of the shadows very uncomfortably. Because when God has something, I believe, for you to do, and it's not supposed to be in the shadows, he begins to remove all the other things that's hiding the thing that he wants to be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
was what started happening to me, relationally, with my jobs. And slowly but surely, I realized the only way that I was going to have satisfaction or just peace of mind, really was just pursuing the thing that I know that God had created me to do. And so
Right.
the first thing I had to do, man, was I had to stop comparing what I thought was the norm, and started leaning into what I really felt like God was, had called me and shaped me to do. And so for me, that was a 3 year journey, man,
Wow.
because I realized I needed to go back and deal with some things from my childhood, some things from my past. But as I was dealing with those things, I became more confident, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
stronger about the things that I was doing, and not realizing it, but trying to figure out what it was that I was supposed to be doing was really kind of happening as I
Right.
was going along the journey. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, no, it's funny that you say that. Like as you're learning, as you're going through the journey, really the things that you learn along the way that you thought you knew, but then you realized, oh, no, that wasn't really what I knew.
Yeah, yeah, most def. Yeah, I tell people all the time that I'm always in continuing education. I'm always learning more about myself, learning more about God, learning more about other people. And as I'm going and as I'm growing, I'm able to help people along the way. And so I tell
Mm-hmm.
somebody, never look at me as if I'm the person that's got it all together, because I don't. I'm probably about a
Mm.
gnat's eyelash ahead. Um, and and most of the times, if you look right next to you, I'm standing right there. And so I'm always trying to be very aware that we are always learning and growing as we're on this journey together. And all I want to do is just share what I believe God has revealed to me with my other brothers and sisters, so that we can walk better together.
Nice, nice. Now that's awesome. And it's interesting that you talked about how, even though you had people kind of pouring into you, you didn't necessarily see that. You didn't necessarily feel that. What were some of the things that you felt like held you back from kind of accepting their vision of your life or of your kind of your gifts?
So I think the biggest thing was comparison. Comparison kills,
Mm,
man. One of the things that if you are not careful, you will always compare yourself, your journey, where you are, to somebody else.
mm-hmm,
I work right now with a great team of people, and three of the people on the team were all turning 40 this year, and
nice.
two of the people on the team, they have their doctorates, right, and they're doing really
Uh-huh.
great stuff. And for a split second, we were all having this mutual woe is me, I'm turning 40 moment. And I looked at them and I'm like, you're 40, you've got your doctorate and you're producing this and you're doing that. And then they looked back at me and said, but you're 40 and you're doing X, Y, and Z. And I realized it
Mm-hmm.
does not matter where we are in life. If we're not careful, we'll compare our place in life to somebody else's, and we'll miss what is happening right in front of
Definitely.
us. And so for me, that was a
Definitely.
huge thing that I had to cast down and cast away. This idea of comparison, this idea of what's normal, what's not normal. You can't be a minister and have a tattoo. You can't, if you're going to be if you're going to be a speaker, you got to speak behind a pulpit at all times. And you can't use certain
Hmm.
words, and you have to do it this way. You've got to have a hoop. And the reality of the matter is, man, when I just leaned into the fact that I am uniquely weird and created by God to be what
Hmm.
I am and to do what I do the way that I do it. I can't do it like anybody else. Um,
Exactly.
my pastor, about 3 years ago, came to our church for our anniversary, and he leaned over while the choir was singing, and he's like, "Hey, how are things going?" And I said, "Pastor, I'm just trying to figure this out. I really have no idea what I'm doing." And he leaned over him and he said, "What do you mean you don't know what you're doing?" He said, "Look out there." He said, "You've got people who are coming to church. They are authentic. They are walking in this journey. They are following you as you follow God. And you've got a
Hmm.
mohawk and some tattoos, and you're wearing a dashiki." He said, "Son, quit trying to read the blueprints and just be the
Yes.
blueprints." And when he said
Yes.
that, man, it was like,
Oh, that's deep.
oh, right. How
That's
many of
deep. I
us,
got to put that in here.
yeah,
Hold on. Quit trying to read
quit trying to
the
be the
blueprint.
blueprint and be the blueprint. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, man. And like I told you, that was like a revelatory atom bomb that just kind of exploded in my life. And
That
from
was
that
deep.
moment on, I really try to make sure that I'm always in a space of discernment and assessment to make sure that I'm not trying to live my life or do what I do based on somebody else's blueprint. Now, that doesn't mean that I
Nice.
don't lean into best practices, because I
Hmm.
believe that
Hmm.
stuff is extremely helpful. But
Yeah.
there are some paths that God has just uniquely designed us for. And there are some people that
Yes.
God has uniquely sent us to. And
Yes.
because of that, if I try to do it like everybody else is doing it, I'm going to miss the assignment and the people that God has sent me to. And so
Yes.
I quit trying to
Yes.
read the blueprint, and I just try to be the blueprint that God has
That's
created and
so
instilled
deep.
in me. Yeah.
That's so cool. And one part that really stuck out to me about what you said, and it's funny because I used to talk to this when I was when I was teaching school, and I had this kind of epiphany, if you would, and it was like I started realizing that I could make myself feel horrible or great depending on who I decided to compare
Yeah,
myself to every
absolutely.
day.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it was so crazy to me because it really it lets you know it's like it doesn't matter who you compare yourself to, right? Because you get to control, right? Like if I want to compare myself to the greatest basketball players in the world, I'm a scrub, right?
Yeah.
But if I want to compare myself to the dudes down the street, I'm pretty good.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. Right.
Right? I can go play. You know how it is when you're in school and everything. You got that one gym, that one court on the gym where all the pro ballers, all the best people play. Then you got that other court that everybody go play on when there's too many people on the one court, and you go over there, but it's all the scrubs and all the
Yeah.
folks who can't, like all the soccer players trying to play basketball, right? And it was crazy to me because you look at it and it's kind of simple that way, but if you choose to compare yourself to either of those people, you're really getting a false positive. You're really getting a
Absolutely.
false idea of what it is because the comparison is not about how you look compared to somebody else because you're comparing yourself to a snapshot of them in time.
Absolutely. That somebody told me a while back. They were like, "Man, I'm just trying to keep up with the Joneses." And the question I asked them is, "Who are
Mm-hmm.
the Joneses trying to keep up with?"
Exactly.
Because if you're
Exactly.
always trying to measure your success based off somebody else, please trust and believe that more than likely they're trying to measure this. But if you're just saying, "Hey, I'm good where I am,
Mm-hmm.
who I am, doing what I'm supposed to be doing," man, that is a sense of freedom and contentment like never before.
Yes, yes, tremendously. Yeah, and it's crazy. And hey, Owens, I see you out there. Thanks for tuning in. And hey, I'm Viv. One of the things that you said that was really powerful was the freedom that comes from real recognizing your gift, recognizing why you were created, recognizing what your purpose in life is. And so many times as leaders, right? And this is one of the things I talk to a lot of my clients about. We talk about executive leadership where people are really trying to teach people how to do what they did,
Hmm.
right? Do what I'm doing, do it the way that I do it. And when we talk about empowering leadership is the fact that what you really want to do is help them to be the best them they can be.
Right.
It's not about them being as good as you are, because they might be better than you are.
Right.
They might have a gift that makes them 10 times better than you.
Absolutely.
But they're being held back because, like, and I love that quote you said, because they're looking at the wrong blueprint, right?
Absolutely.
They're looking at the blueprint instead of trying to be the blueprint.
Yeah.
That was so deep. So that was really tight. I like that. So talk to me a little bit about after you got this transformation, you got to this point. I'm part of the 79ers club as well.
Yeah.
So I feel you. 40
That's right.
is coming.
That's right. 40 is coming.
It's hawking us down, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
But at this point in time, as you began to look at, okay, this is what I need to do. This is how I need to be. Talk a little bit about how your life has changed in that time since you had that realization.
So for me, man, I have always been a paper chaser. Because I in my mind, if I put my mind to it, there's not much that I can't do. And if I don't know how to do it, I'll try to figure it out. And that's a good work ethic. But the reality of the matter is, if it doesn't bring you fullness of joy, it does not make you complete in what you're doing. And so for me, man, I've really been on this journey towards apologetic health and wholeness, and not trying to do stuff for the pursuit of the paper, but do stuff because I am actually in my God lane. And knowing that if I'm doing that, then everything else that needs to happen will take care of, and God will take care of it. And so for me, that's what's been freeing. And there is a fullness of joy that comes with that, and that joy then becomes your strength. And so I may not be vacationing in Jamaica every 3 months, but I'm good. Like, I'm content.
Yeah.
I am happy. And I'm also okay with understanding that while that may not be my reality now, that doesn't necessarily mean it won't be my reality later.
Exactly.
And so for me, this journey has really been a journey towards peace for me. I've been looking for, what does it look like to be emotionally and spiritually healthy at the same time, and find these rhythms of life that are life-giving for myself, but also life-giving to others. Because I grew up around people who worked hard and died, and really did not get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They didn't get to enjoy their families. They didn't get to enjoy their friends. I watched my great grandmother, Lord rest her soul, who would receive all of these gifts from all of these people that she had taken care of over time. She raised these kids over here and raised these kids over there, and she cleaned houses over here. And so for her birthday and Christmas, people from all over the country would send Miss Wells a gift. And my great grandmother in her 90s would take these gifts and say, oh, well, one day I'm going to go out of town and I'm going to use this gown. Or one day I'm going to go out of town and I'm going to use this perfume. And at the age of 92, the Lord called her home. And when he called her home, my family and I had to go back into her bedroom, go in her closet, and look at all of these gifts that had been given to her as rewards for her labor, but she never got to cash them in. She never got to use them. And I remember thinking two things. I am so grateful for that work ethic that she gave me. I'm so grateful for her showing me how to love and how to live and honor people. But I need to reject this idea that I can't cash my stuff in until I see my heavenly home. I want to make sure that my kids know that we can love hard, we can live hard, we can work hard, but we can also enjoy this big, beautiful world that God has given us. And so the last part of that journey was just making sure that when I leave this earth, that I'm passing on that legacy to my children, and they're passing it on to their children, that you can honor God with your life, you can serve him with your whole heart, but you can also enjoy the world around you. And if you're not doing it at least on a daily basis, then you're robbing yourself.
And that's deep, because for a lot of people, like, I know I feel this constant sense. I was talking I was actually talking to my therapist, and we were talking about the fact that, like, I struggle a lot with resting, right? Like, there's almost this sense of, I feel like I need to earn rest.
Yeah.
Like, rest isn't something that's like part of your normal day.
Totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that so much, I mean, and I had to learn about this, like, as I got out of the Marine Corps, right, I got to this sense of, okay, I'm going in to start a new chapter in life, a new way of being. And I had to look at, what type of father did I want to be? What type of husband did I want to be? Now that I'm in this place where I get to decide when, I'm going to be called, or when things are going to be
Mm-hmm.
important, and all the rest of
Mm-hmm.
that. And part of it was really having to plan in my day, like, no, I'm going to rest. I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to have this, and not like not the duty stuff, not the, okay, I'm taking the kids to school, or I'm cooking dinner, but just I'm going to sit and read to my kids before I put them to bed at night. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like, the
yeah.
stuff that's like, this is fun for me and I want to enjoy, but like feeling comfortable allowing myself to enjoy that, and not feeling like I'm somehow not, somehow betraying my work ethic. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, most def. There's nothing wrong with it, and I think for men, and I hope I'm not being misogynistic when I say this, but there is this whole thing about work hard, play hard, and so
Mm-hmm.
if you, if I work hard, then I can rest. When the reality of the
Mm-hmm.
matter is, and I'm learning this as a creative, that when I get some rest, I actually work better. Right, that
Exactly.
my capacity
Exactly.
has expanded at that point, and so it's really not a bad thing to get rest. And rest is not anything that you earn. Rest is something that you deserve. And so shifting
Yes.
that whole paradigm has been extremely helpful for me. It's been fruitful for my family. It's been fruitful for my marriage. It's been fruitful for our business. And I'm looking forward to watching that grow. And again, being able to pass that on to my children.
Nice, nice. So speaking of, it being fruitful for your business and the things that have been going on, talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you're excited about that you're working on right now.
Yeah, I see you got the link up. There is a couple of years ago. Let me backtrack. A couple of years ago, I had a lot of families. I was the director of a community center, and I had a lot of families that were struggling with their children and this whole idea of human sexuality, and how do we talk to our children about sex and sexuality, especially in an urban context. Like, how do we have these
Mm-hmm.
healthy conversations? And then how do we have these healthy conversations with my child who may be gay identifying or same-sex attracted, and what does that look like? And so had these conversations multiple times, and I realized that I would refer them to their pastors, I would refer them to their
Mm-hmm.
counselors, but we just were not having healthy, whole conversations the way that we should. And so as a
Mm-hmm.
result, wrote a curriculum specifically targeting urban African American and Latino churches on how do we
Mm-hmm.
talk to our children about the issues around sexuality and sexual identity. And so we call it Tough Talks. And
Mm-hmm.
Tough Talks, we've been doing it now for the last 3 years. I've been traveling around the country talking to faith leaders, talking to community centers, talking to parents about how do we empower you to have healthy, whole conversations with an S
Mm-hmm.
around sex
Mm-hmm.
and sexuality. Because the reality of the fact is the conversations about the birds and the bees is not just a one-time conversation,
Exactly.
especially in this hypersexualized world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Our world has created new normals. And so, how do we
Yes.
have conversations with our children to let them know that family can look a myriad of ways? You can have families that is a mom and a dad. You can have a family that is two dads. You can have a family that is two moms. You can have a family that is just a mom or just a dad. And those are all
Mm-hmm.
families, and they all need to be honored and respected. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have those conversations with pastors, to equip pastors to have those conversations with their congregations. And then my team and I will have those conversations with parents, so that parents can have those conversations with their children. And then we have those
Mm-hmm.
conversations with youth, so those youth can have those conversations with their pastors and their parents, right? And so we
Nice.
try to make sure that
Nice.
we do a full 360, so that everybody can have some conversational points to talk about what does it mean to be a healthy human being, and what is this beautiful thing that God has given us called sex, and how do we express it in our everyday lives.
Nice.
So yeah, that's Tough Talks.
Nice. So, and I gave the people a little bit of your background when I brought you on, but talk to them a little bit. Like, you've been in this kind of world. This is what your background is. So
Yeah.
talk to them a little bit about how you came to kind of understand this and have these conversations? What are some of the things that you worked through and what you did?
So, so again, a lot of the families that I came in contact with through the community center, that was the beginning of those conversations. But then, man, I had a lot of kids that I love. You read my bio early. I've got a lot of children, but I also have a lot of. We don't have a
So
lot to
you
do.
heard the be fruitful and multiply. You were
Well,
like, got it.
we ain't really got a whole lot to do in Kentucky. So anyway, I'm just playing. But but one of the things that was hard for me was watching my children and my students through the community, who were struggling through these phases of life, these
Mm-hmm.
transitions in life, and they really didn't have anybody to talk to. And I was glad to have the
Mm-hmm.
conversations with them as their mentor or their teacher. But I really felt bad that when they went home, they didn't have anybody to continue the conversation with. One
Mm-hmm.
young lady that I've been mentoring for a few years now, she really struggled about what does it mean to be gay and to be a Christian, and does that mean that God doesn't love me? Does it mean that I was created wrong? And da 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 da. And I remember having a conversation with her in the middle of the night, and I'm like, "Baby, God loves you." Like, and unwrapping that for her and letting her know what that looks like, and helping her understand that He's with you every step of this journey while you're trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
who you are, or if this is who you are, then He still
Right.
loves you.
Right.
And being able to
Right.
have those conversations. And I realized that, my wife tells me I have the uncanny gift for asking the uncomfortable questions, right? Um, I'll own that. Um, um, so I literally sent out a text message to about 20 pastors one night. And I was like, hey, when's the last time you had a conversation at your church about sex, period? And of the 20, 18 of them responded back and was like, never. And why would we do that? Um, and I was like, well, first of all, sex is awesome. Let's put that
Right.
out there. And
Just saying.
it's just gonna put that out there. God gave it to us, and um, what a bad representation of this beautiful gift that God has given us if we're
Mm-hmm.
not explaining it. It's like handing. I'm not a gun person. Okay, I'm not a gun
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
do know that if a gun is used properly, you can use that gun,
Mm-hmm.
point it towards something, and hunt, and you can now bring back some game to feed your family. And so, what
Mm-hmm.
is happening when we tell our kids, or share with our congregations, hey, sex is this horrible, terrible thing, but you got mother so and so that's having all these children over here, and then we shame the single. So it was just a really, really bad theology
Mm-hmm.
around sex and sexuality that really, really,
Mm-hmm.
really needed to be dealt with. And then I
Right.
and then I sent another text and was like, hey, if I wrote something, can I come to your church? And
Nice.
many of them were like, please. As a matter of fact, one brother
Nice.
said, if you write something, you can come to my house. And so that was kind of the beginning of Tough Talks, man.
That's
And
awesome.
God really has taken it and blessed that opportunity. And again, it's not me just going around the country talking about sex, but it really has evolved into how do we have tough conversations. And so Tough Talks has
Mm-hmm.
evolved now, to not only talking about issues around sex and sexuality, but we're also talking about bullying. We're talking about racism. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
Christianity and being a millennial. There's so many different topics
Mm-hmm.
that families want to talk about, but they just don't know how to
Right.
start the conversation. And so I get to come in and sit one on one and ask them the questions, and engage in conversations that they don't know how to start at home, and then hopefully give them something to talk with when they go back home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what are some of the kind of the biggest myths that you deal with when you're going around and talking specifically kind of to parents, to educators, to kind of the authority figures, the leadership groups, right? What are some of the things, the misconceptions that they have about these conversations that you help them out with?
So I think the biggest misconception, and this really was what set my trajectory to start having these conversations. The biggest misconception is that children aren't listening. And
Mm,
and that is so not true. That's the furthest from the truth. The reality of the matter is they may not want to hear what you have to say, and that's real because if we go back to when we were younger, we didn't want to hear it either. But
exactly.
the truth is they are hearing it. Heritage Community Services put out a study, probably about 8 to 10 years ago, that said 70% of all youth, um, who were presented with an opportunity to engage in risky sexual behavior declined because they had the records playing of what their parents had shared with them earlier.
Nice.
So for me,
even if they ain't hearing you now, they'll hear you later.
They'll hear you later. And for me, what that told me was, if I don't at least put the tape in the deck, if I at least don't play the record, it's not going to be there when I'm not around.
Right.
I have 5 children, 4 boys and one girl, and one of the things that I had to finally tell my daughter, who is dating, and little boys like her, and she likes little boys. There is an ideal for our family. There is an ideal that I believe as a Christian that God would like for all of us. But the reality remains, I won't be around when you have to make these very tough decisions all the time. So the only thing that I can do is let you know, 1, I love you. 2, you're valuable. 3, you don't have to make any decisions that you don't want to make in the spur of the moment. And 4, here are all of them. And I know this is where some Christians kind of start biting their nails. But if you decide to make a choice that is contrary to what my ideal is, this is how you protect yourself.
Exactly.
And
right.
so
your choice to do this shouldn't be a death sentence, or it shouldn't be a permanent problem. Yes, I can still disagree with the decision that you make and ask you to be safe while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So
and just to that point, right? As a father of a daughter as well, mine's a little bit younger. She's only 11 right now, but I am a gun person, and largely for that reason.
For that reason, yep.
Right. So I always play that scene of Bad Boys 2 on loop in my head. So yeah, I told my daughter she can't date till she's 40, so we'll be good.
See, that's good. 40 is a nice, healthy number. I feel like it's appropriate.
Nice, healthy. You done lived life. You done lived life. Right. No, but I truly agree with you. Like when I was teaching high school, it was the same thing, right? You got kids who are in this place, and we talk about this with leaders just in general. There's a tendency that we have as leaders to try to protect people from harm that we see, or to protect them from mistakes. And I always talk to people, and I'm like, okay, what I need you to think about how you taught your kids from 0 to 5, right? When the kids were learning how to walk, when they were learning how to talk, when they were learning all the rest of that type of stuff, what you did is you protected them from all the stuff that could actually kill them. And then other than that, you went ahead and you were just like, all right, go ahead. And you encouraged them, and they couldn't make mistakes. Right. There was all this type of stuff, right? They get older and we get scared, and we develop a leadership mentality of, I have to protect you from all harm, instead of I have to be with you while you learn how to get back up from falling.
Right.
And so I think that it's really beneficial that you're having these conversations, that you're teaching parents to have these conversations, because it changes the paradigm, right? Yeah. It changes their thinking from, I have to keep my kids from making the wrong decision, to it's okay if my kid makes the wrong decision. I'm going to give them the skills that they need to recover from that. Yeah. And I'm going to give them in the moment the skills that they need to actually make a decision that they're choosing, instead of having to feel like they're forced into a decision.
Absolutely. Right? And the reality is this: I'm protecting my child by empowering my child. And when I've empowered you and I've shown you every spectrum. So one of the things that we are very open, my wife and I are very open and candid about, is of our 5 children, we were both single parents when we got married. My wife had a son, and I had a daughter when we got married, and then we added our three other children. And one of the things that we try to be really careful and honest and open with our children about is that our lives drastically changed when we became single parents. It does not mean that we did not love our children, but it definitely means that some things that we wanted to do got delayed a little bit. And so we're honest about that part of our journey. We're honest about that part of our stories. And it is my opinion, and I believe it to be true. I even believe it to be biblical, that then empowers our children to make a full 360 decision about where they want to do. Like, so none of my children will ever be able to leave my house and say that they didn't make a decision, especially when it comes to that particular area, and they were not fully informed as to what their options were.
Exactly. And talk about a little bit how empowering that is, not just from the perspective of when they're getting ready to make the decision, but also from the perspective of after they've made the decision and they're looking at the results, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times we get kids who they're under the thumb of their parents and they're making the decisions they're making. Everybody has that quote unquote rebellious phase, right? And when I look at leaders, one of the things that's so amazing to me is when people are forced to make decisions that are contradictory to what they think is good and what you think is good, just so that they can show some sort of power in their lives, right?
Right.
I think you said it just a second ago. You're protecting them, and in large part, you're protecting them from themselves and from
Absolutely.
that kind of binary thinking, right? And how important is it that you're able to be vulnerable in front of your kids so they're able to see what it looks like to reflect on decisions that you're not proud of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or that where you can see that you made mistakes. How important is that as a parent, as a leader, for you to show that part of adulthood,
Yeah.
that part of decision making?
Yeah. It's important because it frees. First of all, let me backtrack for a second. It is important to understand that everybody learns differently, right? Some people are
Mm,
experiential. Some
yes.
people read it in a book. I've literally traveled from the East Coast to the West Coast having these talks now, and it is interesting when I sit down with people with different cultures. I was at a church in Fremont, California, and the congregation was predominantly first generation Korean. And when we
Wow.
talked
Okay.
about how did they learn about sex and sexuality, 90% of the participants in that workshop said that they learned about sex and sexuality from one of two ways. Either they learned about it from the farm animals or they learned about it through reading a book, and more through reading a book than
Wow.
the farm animals. And in that moment, I learned that people learn through so many different ways. I have five
Hmm.
children. None of them learn the exact same way. I've got my oldest son who you say, don't touch the pot. The pot's going to be hot. He'll say, yes, sir. And he'll touch the pot. And he goes, oh my gosh, did you know it was hot? Then I've got my middle son, right? Then I've got my middle son, and I'll be like, don't touch the pot. The pot is hot. He will walk past the pot, around the kitchen, and go outside the house because he does not want to get burned. Why? Because he's heard one time that the pot was hot. And so I think that it's important for us as parents and as leaders to understand that it's
Hmm.
our responsibility not to protect them from to only protect them from the consequences, but to prepare them for the consequences as well.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so if
Yes.
we're able to do that, then we're doing our job as leaders. Then we're doing our job as parents to say, look, it's scriptural. Like I keep going back to it's scriptural. The wages of sin
Yep.
is death,
Yep.
but the gift of God is eternal life. And so at the end of the day, Christ, it is easily laid out. Here is a consequence, and you get to make a choice. And
Right.
I think sometimes we get so scared that people are going to make the negative choice and reap the negative consequence that we stand in front of them and don't allow them to make the decision. When the reality of the
Right.
matter is that is the way that some folk are going to learn.
Exactly. And I think that
Period.
one of the things that's so important about it, and when you look at Jesus's message and the whole idea of redemption, right? Paul talks about it for, all things are permitted, not all things are beneficial, right? Like
Absolutely.
the whole idea of, right, this fear of making mistakes is what cripples us because we actually learn pattern recognition. Our brains figure out, okay, this is what I want to do by making the mistakes. We learn how to walk by falling off balance and then ultimately figuring out what equilibrium is. Like we've gotten to this place, and I talk about this in all my leadership talks when I'm talking to business owners and leadership teams. We've created through our school systems and through our business systems this zero defect mentality, this idea that excellence is based on lack of defect
Right.
instead of excellence being based on progress,
Right.
right? Excellence being based on your ability, your resiliency, your ability to overcome, stresses and catastrophes. And when we're raising kids, that's one of the things that's so devastating for them is that they get to the point where they got all these decisions to make, and what they feel is, I can't make any wrong moves,
Right,
right?
right, right.
And so, like, that's just crazy
Yeah,
anxiety that we're putting on a
yeah,
generation of children,
yeah.
right? At a time when the world is opening up to them in ways that it's never been open to
Ever,
any
ever.
generation ever in the history of the
All
world.
right. I tell my
And so
parents all the
it's so
time that we
powerful.
are raising children. We are raising a different generation in a different world. And so
Hmm.
we cannot expect to take this generation of children. Now, I'm not saying old school way wasn't right. Old
Hmm.
school got us together and it worked out, but we were
Right.
also living in a different world. Our
Exactly.
children are growing up in a different world. We are growing up in a world. Excuse me, they're growing up in a world, and we talked about the 79ers Club, but they're growing up in a world where we watch the evolution of the telephone and the pager
Right.
to the cordless phone to the cell phone. These kids only know touchscreens. They
Exactly.
don't know the Razor. They don't know the little
Right.
Nokia. They don't know this stuff,
Right.
right? And
The Kia
so
Sarah.
and so why not kind of bring the value, the moral, the lesson that we're trying to teach into a touchscreen generation instead of trying to use rotary phone tactics in a
Hmm.
touchscreen.
Hmm.
It just doesn't work. And so again,
Exactly.
a lot of what we try to do is try to empower families and community leaders and pastors with creative methods to have tough conversations.
Nice, nice. Well, that is phenomenal, sir. I am tremendously thankful for you coming on and being able to talk a little bit about that, because I think it's a really important thing. One last question, kind of serious question on your vision. And one of the things I want you to talk about is kind of, as you see these conversations going forward, what's your vision kind of for how they're going to impact the world, how they're going to change the world as we see it today?
Oh, okay. So you're gonna end on a heavy note. Okay. Well, all right.
No, 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 we're not
No,
gonna end on that one. I
no,
got some funny
no,
stuff
no,
for you
no,
in just
no,
a second, but
no,
I'm
no.
gonna make you be deep one more
No,
second.
so man, I feel like there is a I'm a big believer in family and I'm a big believer in the village, and I believe that much of what we see in our world is because there's been a deep degradation and a deconstruction of the village. There's not
Mm,
communication, and we don't communicate the way we used to. We are becoming more and more disconnected as we grow older.
mm,
As the generations come in, they're becoming more and more. And so it is really my hope, my ideal, that Tough Talks will begin to make people re-engage with humanity, right?
nice,
And not only
nice.
just send a text message to one another, but no, I want to hear your voice, right? Because there is something about hearing "I'm okay" and then hearing "I'm okay." Because when I hear "I'm
Mm-hmm,
okay," I hear a lilt in your voice and I feel a sadness in your
mm-hmm,
soul, and then it makes me want to lean in a little bit better and go, "Okay, but tell me how you're really feeling." Or if you're
right.
okay, why are you just okay? Why aren't you better than okay? Because we
Mm-hmm,
hide behind text messages, we hide behind all of this stuff that has disconnected us from humanity. And so if I had a grand vision, I would pray that and I hope that Tough Talks will be the spark that starts this revolution or this revival for us to communicate better and to hear one another and to hear our hearts and most importantly hear God. And then hopefully in
nice.
hearing all of the in those different places, we can start healing and being a little bit better together.
That is awesome. See, that's the reason why I came with the tough one, because I knew you was gonna knock it out the park. So I want to thank you for that. There's a book that I think would help, and you might have read it already, but it's called "The Lessons of History" by Will Durant. Um, Phenomenal book. It really goes through. They did a history of civilization, so it's like a 10,000 word, um, uh, or a whole bunch of volumes and everything. I haven't read that yet, but I've listened to a part of it. But I did read, this is about a 100-page book that they did. It was basically all the lessons that they learned from that study. It talks a lot about the stuff that you're talking about, how civilization goes, how human beings go, specifically how kids grow up to adults, and what
Yeah,
are some of the issues. I think that would be a good book to get for you to get some talking points, but also to get out to your people. It was a phenomenal book that I just read.
appreciate
So
that.
I always like to throw those out. But then now we're going to talk about something really, really funny real quick,
Oh
because
Lord.
I want to figure out, here we go. Room, desk, or car which one do you clean first and why?
Ooh, room, desk, or car? Well, my wife will definitely tell you that it's not my room. Um, so so I'm gonna say my car, and that's just because,
Mm.
yeah, with desk being a close second. Just because there is something about riding around in filth and funk and farm, and I don't like it. And I heard an old player say once upon a time, if you see how a man treats his car, that's how he'll treat his woman. And so I don't try to walk around with an ashy, dirty car. I try to keep it up. Plus, if you got as many kids as I do, you know good and dang on well that that if you let your car get too dirty when you got 5 kids, you will find chicken nuggets and French fries and God knows what in the glove
Yeah,
compartment box, and
you ain't never lied.
it'll just stink. Plus, I'm a big guy, and the last thing I need is somebody getting in my car and going, "Your car stink," and they think it's me. So I don't need that happening, right? So yeah.
Good to go. Good to go. Well, Will, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, Mac. You got me over here just busted up. Like I told everybody, I told y'all out there,
Oh,
all my
man.
legacy leaders, this dude is hilarious. He's also phenomenally deep, phenomenally gifted. And I'm really just so thankful for you being on the podcast and coming and blessing us with your time, brother.
Hey, man, thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
No problem. So you all have the link is posted, it's pinned up to the top, so you can go and check out the tough talks that Will does. And if you want to book Mac or anything like that, you can go ahead onto his website and do that. Talk to the people about what's the best way to get in touch with you or all the rest of that type of stuff if they want to get some more information from you.
Hey, so you can go to Tough Talks. Go to our website. It's www.letstalkthisout.com, www.letstalkthisout.com, and simply just subscribe to the page and you'll get updates. We're going to be releasing the Tough Talks toolbox pretty soon, and hopefully we'll be doing some webinars very soon. Or if you would like for me and my team to come to your city, to your church, to your community center, please shoot us an email at letstalkthisout.com, and we'll get that, and somebody from the team will respond to you. We'll be in Detroit in May. We'll be in, oh gosh, I can't think of the dates off top. But if you go to letstalkthisout.com, you can find out. And then you can also friend me on Facebook. My wife says I should be careful just friending everybody, but it's Facebook. I don't know all these people.
Right.
But
Don't worry about it.
William Mack III, friend me, send me a message, and we can talk as well. I look forward to doing it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, brother. So you go ahead and have a great night. I'll talk to you later. I'm gonna wrap up the show, but thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Robert. Bless you, boy.
Talking to you later, brother. All right, so all my legacy leaders out there, I want to thank you all again for tuning in to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we're changing the world one legacy at a time. Our biggest goal, one of the things I want you all to focus on so much, is just realizing that you have a gift. You have a reason that you are here on this earth. There's a reason that you were created. I'm a firm believer that everybody has something specific that they were put here for. There aren't any mistakes. There aren't any accidents. I don't believe in coincidence. You're here for a reason. One of the reasons we come here together each week is so that we can figure out some ways that we can better manifest the greatness that is within us, and better ways that we can help others to manifest the greatness that is within them. But for every one of you that's out there that's listening, one of the things that I want to say to you specifically is know that you have greatness within you. Know that you are special. Know that you matter, right? And part of your goal is to learn how to bring your gift to the world. And there's a lot of you all out there that are leaders and that have been bringing your gift to the world, and now you're trying to figure out how to help others, right? And I want you to just understand that leadership at its heart is holding space for that transformation. It's holding space and love for the people that you see potential in, that you see can do great things in the world. It's you holding that space for them and being willing to be patient, being willing to love on them long enough for them to make that transition. Because at its core, leadership is facilitating, right? It's helping. It's participating with people as they make their transition, as they make their legacy transformation, as they help their greatness to manifest and come to the world. So remember, as Marianne Williamson says, right? Let your light shine. Don't hide it. Don't, think that you shouldn't be out there. Go out into the world and let your light shine, because by doing so, you give people permission to do the same. You liberate people from their own fears. People can see you, and like my brother Mac just talked about, they can see a blueprint so that eventually they can be the blueprint. So thank you all for tuning in. Really looking forward to hearing your comments. If you all are watching on the replay, let me know what you thought of the talk. Make sure you reach out and talk to Mac if you want to bring him in, so you can have some tough talks with you or your congregation or your school or whoever the group is that you're leading. And as we always say at the end of the show, remember that we're trying to change the world one legacy at a time, and that it starts with you living every day like it's on purpose. Until next time, have a great day.